So we just went 28 hours without power, and it really got me thinking about essential preps that probably we all should be thinking about.
Moving to southern Missouri is the best thing I've ever done for my family.
And let's face it, the truth is that most of our municipalities and utility companies are so good and so proficient at getting everything back online like that we've become soft. You know, we don't really, even when we think we do, we kind of don't have every single component of like a basic standard of life streamlined where we can take it over in a moment's notice if all those other utilities and municipality systems just go offline. But since Helene, we honestly all should be thinking about it, because anything is possible. And what would we do if either the government or the municipalities couldn't or didn't want to respond to you? What if you were not easily reached? If a whole mountainside fell down, crazy things happen. So I really got to see it with Helene too. People, putting videos out who were prepared versus people who were not. And the difference can be life or death. But what we're going to talk about today are essential basic preps that I couldn't even believe that we didn't have together. We have been working so hard. We've moved so many times. Our last home was a live-in flip. And I'll tell you what, prepping has gone by the wayside. So I made a video about prepping, and a lot of that was about preps that I used to do. And I'll tell you what, that don't help now. So number one essential prep that I think affects most Missourians, but honestly just most Americans, is that we do not have backup water systems. So most of us are either on a municipal water system or a private well. And in that private well is an electric pump. So when the power goes out, so does the water. And that is probably the most devastating thing to happen, because if you can have water, you can really maintain a lot of components that are essential to life. And without it, life becomes miserable just in the blink of an eye. Developing some sort of alternative or secondary water system or backup pumping system was always part of our plan. But I'm going to be honest, as we all get comfortable, oh my goodness, those things get farther and farther down the list. And I admit this year we have talked more about, just superficial remodeling and adding another bedroom and this, that, and the other. I talked about paver stones on the driveway. I've talked about all these things that truly don't matter. And I felt so thankful for this 28 hours without power, because it really showed me what's important. And I'm going to tell you the truth, new tiling is not as good as having water. So I've been thinking a few different systems. I've been thinking about doing a Gruns 4 solar pump. I've talked about them before in videos. They're amazing. All we would need is probably, 1 to 2 panels, not much, a small, couple $100 inverter. Really, you don't need a lot to run these. I think we could do the whole system for well under $4,000, probably $3,000 to $3,500. And yeah, that is a chunk of change, but think of how many times, honestly, you've blown that money on something that doesn't matter. And oh my gosh, I just got a shower, and that is it's priceless. It's priceless. So water, thinking about the solar pump, another idea is getting the Bison hand pump, which I've talked about before. And that means then really primitively having to move water, still really in buckets. They come with a hose bib, so you can, attach a hose, but you're still pretty much having to fill up buckets to fill up your toilets, boiling water and all of that. But the truth is, when you're stuck, you're flooded in and you ain't got nothing else to do, I don't totally mind bucketing water, although it's not the best. And then my third idea was putting in some just gravity-fed holding tanks. So, tanks that are a little bit higher up on the hill. Because of Helene, though, I'm so a little bit paranoid of flash flooding. I've already been thinking about ways that I would kind of berm them in and really setting the rock really well and putting them to the side, so if the whole mountain ever slid down, it wouldn't slide down into the house. But gravity feed tanks do have to be higher than your home. And I thought about that would also be probably a primitive system. I mean, technically you could tie it in line somewhere with your other system. I would probably need an expert to kind of help me to noodle all that. And then also having that line continue down to our garden, so that if we lost power in the summer, we would still have, thousands of gallons to buffer that with our garden. So one of those or more than one of those systems needs to go in this year because, in 2025, I'm going to put it out there, because nothing is more important than water. And essential prep number 2, which we always do, we just haven't got around to it yet, is putting in a wood stove. Missouri has tons of great wood. I mean, everyone's got oak and cedar. Cedar makes your great kindling. The oak around here burns so hot, it's insane. So you've got a lot of, and there's a lot of other woods that burn great too, but almost everyone has a snippet or more of forest on their land. And so then you have, kind of that just omnipresent source of fuel. And eventually I really would like the boiler system to heat water, but even if you have to go primitive and you've got that wood stove and you can throw a pot of water on and do your dishes, what a treat. Today we used a shrimp. We have a propane cook stove that we use for big shrimp boil. Okay, just sounded weird, and we boiled water for that for dishes, and it was super primitive, and yet I was so grateful for it. And so I actually am okay with that being kind of a backup for hot water, at least temporarily. There's tons of amazing things you can do. I've already probably talked about it too, is how the boilers, with the coils inside your wood stove can actually go and feed your hot water tank, and you can have a seamless system that goes the way I've had it before. It was propane and then the boiler. And it was brilliant. It was when one was on, the other was off, and it worked seamlessly. And eventually I do want that, but just for 2025, gotta have a wood stove, because at least we could survive. And I want it to be a cook stove, remember, so it's heat, cooking, and then of course the capability of boiling water, whether it's primitive with pots or we put in the boiler system, either way. So that has to happen, essential. So really between those, right, we can cook our food, we've got some water, we have the capability of doing hot water. The next on the line, third essential prep, is having some sort of backup system for food preservation, freezing food, or refrigeration. So what I want to do is, because of the location of where our propane tank is I want to probably put a giant propane, not giant, but a large propane chest freezer in our garage. And here's my idea, is actually not having it on, because propane is expensive, but it would be a backup system. So it'd be, clean and empty, ready to go. Power goes out, get her going, get her cold, and then we've got 3, some of them are smaller too, 3 electric chest freezers, and be able to combine those into the one propane. And know that with our size tank, I mean, gosh, it could run a long time. I would say 6 months. I could be wrong, but I do know that we kind of gauged we've got like a propane heater, and it used actually very little. And we felt like one full propane tank, because we've got a pretty big tank. I would say it's like 300 gallons or more, that we could probably like run that heater for a year, considering we wouldn't be running it throughout the whole year during the summer and whatnot. But so I'll have to check with efficiency with the chest freezers. They used to be super inefficient, but stuff has improved so much in the propane world. And yeah, I just really hate the idea that when the electricity goes out, like, we've got thousands of dollars worth of meat. And even when it's our own meat, we consider that thousands of dollars worth of meat. So whether we buy it or we've raised it ourselves, it's precious. And I just was thinking about the food in our freezers so much today. Now, I don't think that we never even opened a chest freezer during this last 28 hours, but any bit longer and we would have definitely been flirting with all of that food, kind of going to waste. I mean, you start to eat it quickly, but there's no way you can eat enough meat that's intended to last you 6 months. You know what I mean? And yeah, and hard to preserve on the spot, especially because we like to, make a lot of jerky with an electric food dehydrator. Yeah, so food, like freezing food, became really big on my mind. And I think that a great backup system, and it's just a temporary system, but it could get you through a lot of hard stuff. And let's say that freezer only got you through your 6 months. If you're determined to live and things are still insane, or it's Armageddon or whatever, you're gonna have figured out some more other ways of preserving food, whether it's preserving with fat or salt or drying or canning. Humans and our ancestors have figured this out. So, but it'd be really nice to have a freezer to get you to that. And let's say that your electricity was off just for a month, which is enough time to really suffer. It would be an absolute blessing to have a freezer to keep all that meat in. And if you think about what's in your fridge, especially like if you're in that time where it's like, okay, we've got to eat this food. In a few days, while it's still kind of cool and still preserved in the fridge, you could be eating down everything that would pretty much go bad, and then freezing too anything that would be good to have frozen. So yeah, I think more about having a propane freezer, than I do a propane fridge, although it wouldn't hurt to have both. Essential prep number 4 isn't actually something to buy or put in, but more of like thoughtful systems to kind of put in on your property. So what I noticed was how, and I have been noticing it for years, is like how the water flows, how the water continues to take out our driveway. We didn't have a problem this year or this storm, but we've had before our shop flood on one side. Now we fixed that problem, and we did kind of just like a real primitive kind of drainage system, because what happens is we live on a hill, the shop is at the lower part, and it's earth berm, and it was just kind of flooding on the wall of the shop. So we have fixed a lot with the shop, with that wall, with the roof, but really we need a proper French drain along that shop. And I was looking at our road today, and really there's 2 clear, and it's always the same clear rivets of the way the water flows, and you just look at that and then fix it and create a system. And growing up, we always had really big, deep water bars that we would pound and set into place, so it wasn't like sloppy, like loose or anything. I mean, they were like pounded in. You dig them out, then you pound them in and set them with rock. And they're a pain in the butt, because you have to drive slow. You even sometimes have to like crank your wheels and go in and out of like a really deep water bar. But, either the water's gonna erode and tear apart your road. It's gonna erode your road, right? Or you're going to create the same system, but with a little bit more strategy and a little bit more engineering, and you're gonna take care of that problem. And that is something that I really want to do for 2025. So I want to not only really set in 2 proper water bars into our road, but then I want them to go off the side, ditch down the side of the road, and go into the drainage where they naturally should, instead of tearing apart our road. This is the 4th time our neighbor called us and he's like, I'm gonna come get to your road, and I feel so guilty. You know what? This prep number 4 is just to be a good neighbor so that your neighbors who have amazing equipment don't feel like they have to keep rescuing you. Okay? This is just to be a better neighbor. Oh man, and 2 of his fields flooded. He lost so many hay bales last night. I mean, only God knows where we're gonna find stuff. Like, oh my goodness. There was some crazy stuff. We have a church down here that flooded, all because they're down in that floodplain. But man, I felt so bad. He lost a bunch of his fencing and gates, and luckily another neighbor had electric fencing and they were able to get something up to hold in his cows because he just moved his cows to that field. So here's this guy dealing with all that, and he's calling us to tell us he's gonna come fix our road. And I don't wanna be that neighbor anymore, right? So essential prep number 4 is figure out the way water moves off your property. Where is it causing damage? Figure out a system and fix it. Essential prep number 5 is to get a heck of a lot more batteries. We always have like the prepped out, usually Costco just like ricks of batteries, and we've used them up the past few years and we are dangerously low. All of our headlamps had old batteries. We used to have stacks of old flashlights. I used to have multiple of usually they're a couple $100, military grade, really nice lights, and I don't even know, they're all broken. And our flashlight situation was just absolutely terrible, and I couldn't believe how bad it had got. And I just was totally out of touch that we pretty much had used all our batteries, and there was something broken on each little light. And I think having a mixture, I think headlamps are great when you have to do some sort of crazy mission or you're fixing something, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, you need your hands. Those are essential. I think having just at least a couple really high quality, and yes, they're expensive, flashlights, especially if it does come down to security and you need to see something really far. Yeah, I think that those are pretty good, kind of necessary. And then, but I say we all need kind of a little stockpile of just cheap lights. And another reason too to have extra is to be the kind of person that can share with people in your community that aren't prepared, that were like us and we have one headlamp that kind of works for a family of 4. So yeah, just having all your batteries and all your lights. And the truth is that every family member should have a freshly, and I'm not really into the rechargeable batteries. Oh my gosh, we have one and it's a pain in the butt and you have to charge it all the time. And especially if then the electricity goes out, I do like old fashioned batteries for that application. When electricity is working, rechargeable stuff is great. But anyway, everyone should have a headlamp by their bed. It's a simple thing. It's good for natural disaster emergencies. It's good for security issues. It's good for just having. So yeah, the simplest thing is having everyone in your family having enough light and battery to run those. So I'm not sure. This is going to be essential prep number 6. I'm not sure if this is going to get done 2025, although I'd really like it, and I don't think that it would be that hard now. I know that we could get help from neighbors and do it pretty quickly, but I really want an outhouse. Growing up, we always had them, and I just think that when it comes down to it, and let's just say that today I felt like water was so precious. So precious. And the truth is, I would rather use it to bathe than to use it to flush, that kind of stuff. So I really, truly think that having that, one, of course, have a system where the toilets can work, but if there's ever an issue with low water or any kind of water issue, it does make sense to not use water in that moment when water's precious. And maybe there's a limit, maybe there's a scarcity, even just temporarily, that you're not using it to go to the bathroom. So I want an outhouse. My daughter wants it to have the moon cut out in the door, like all old-fashioned. And yeah, I didn't think that I would do that here, but after these last 28 hours, I just thought that's just a good backup bathroom option. Another reason I like an outhouse is when you're super muddy. We are animal people, we are muddy people, like dirty one way or another, whether we're just having fun or we're just being with horses, you can get so dirty. But to be able to go to the bathroom when you're filthy and you don't want to like take off your muddy boots and this, that, and the other. So yeah, I think that there's a point to them, but it's definitely on the prep list. If not 2025, it's gonna get done 2026 for sure, but we're gonna be gunning for 2025. And of course, you guys, I could just keep going and going because there's so many aspects to prepping. I just hope that you guys are all thinking about it. Just across the world, there's so much going on. I don't know if you guys have heard, but Spain, like completely flooded. People are talking about they got as much water, like close to like Hurricane Helene or like in that way. And yeah, kind of some similar anomalies too. Not an effective warning went out and no government response. People are without food and water. They've got like 4 feet of sludge in their home. And they feel completely abandoned by the government. You gotta love Europeans though, when their, leaders came to do the photo ops, they threw mud in their face. So, they at least let them know what they thought. But anyway, these events are happening all over the world. And one thing that we're seeing a lot more across the board is we're seeing no government response. And something interesting to say, because it's not really being talked about with Helene, but I'm sure that it was necessary, at least with 2 of them. But in Helene, 3 levees had massive amounts of water that were released, enough water to pretty much create like that wall of water in some of those areas where literally people had no time to respond. And yes, I believe that it should have been obviously public officials' responsibilities to warn people that water was released, right? And I think that those 3 dams that had that much water released definitely contributed to the story. So why would it not be their responsibility to warn people they're doing that? And in a similar vein, in Spain, what happened is really without a lot of people's knowledge, in just a short amount of time, Spain has removed over 100 levees, dams, and canals. And it was done, kind of with like that environmental rhetoric, like rewilding the rivers and creeks, and letting native fish populations thrive again, but without any research, without any like public discourse or knowledge about it. And some people are saying very much in line with kind of like that Agenda 30 plan, like there's just some suspicion there. But regardless, that totally played into the flooding that we saw in Spain. So there's a lot of different components that are all kind of playing together to create these weather events that are unprecedented. And definitely in Spain, taking down all of that, all of those levees, dams, and canals was a huge part of their story. So yet again, just another reason that we all need to keep our head on a swivel, be super prepared. I have to say, after weathering these tornadoes and this storm and the flash flooding, we were so thankful to be here. We thought about all the victims of Hurricane Helene so much, and also recognized how we too just didn't think that was going to happen and didn't really, properly prepare. We didn't even go buy drinking water. Luckily, my husband could get out and buy some drinking water, but for how many people does that not happen? And there was tons of photographs of people drinking the completely toxic water there and getting so sick. And something that's not really being talked about is a lot of the cadaver searching dogs are dying. If you look into it, like they're finding empty barrels of raw, like radioactive waste, plastic plants, sewage treatments. I mean, so much toxic sludge went into that water. And we know just here, when we went out last night, we could smell gas and propane because gas tanks, holding tanks and propane tanks washed down the creek, and we could smell them throughout the whole valley. So that's small scale, I know that's just teeny bit, not even compared to what people in Helene are dealing with, in North Carolina in particular, but it was really eye-opening. So what I would say, y'all, is that you really can't totally predict everything that's going to happen. And so we need to be prepared. We need to have backup water systems, and we also need to have really high grade water filtration systems. I think that we should have multiple ways to heat ourselves. I haven't totally figured out the cooling thing yet. I've been watching some videos though, looking at direct current. We might have a video talking about that, but these are the things we need to be thinking about. And I hate to say it, but for some of us that haven't been, totally staying up on our preparing, we need to think about it more than retiling our homes. And that hurts to say, but it is truth. Or for some of us, it's thinking about the next vacation or whatever it is. We need to put that aside until we 100% know that we could really seamlessly take care of our families in these unpredictable, unprecedented times. Okay, you guys, thank you for sticking with me all the way through this video. And of course, if you want to talk about Southern Missouri, moving here, what the real estate market is like, all my info is in the description. Give me a call, text, we can set up a Zoom, email me, whatever works best for you. And I would love to share with you how amazing moving to this great state has been for my family and I. Okay, guys, until next time, bye.